you had the king of Jordan, King Abdullah. You had the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, who I consider a terrorist. I'll say that from my words only, not necessarily putting words into your mouth, Noah. And then you have the president of Egypt, al-Sisi. All were scheduled to meet with Biden. Biden, after this trip to Israel, was going to head over to Jordan and meet with them. That is now not happening. Is that because of pressure from the Arab world, quote unquote? Or is that because, well, we don't know what happened with this hospital, so let's just call the whole thing off and it'll help us put more blame on Israel? Because at the end, we prefer that.
Yeah, I think you would have to say that it's probably attributable to pressure from below. The thaw between the Sunni kingdoms, the Sunni states in the region, Sunni Arab states, and Israel is really a top-down phenomenon. It is the governments of these undemocratic regimes, Egypt, the UAE, Jordan, and lastly, Saudi Arabia, which was probably the trigger for this event. Saudi Arabia was getting very close to a public rapprochement with Israel. But at the lower level, at the civilian level, where individuals have marinated for decades in anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic propaganda, the Palestinian plight still registers, even if it doesn't with their governments. So when you do see these episodes of violence happen and the street erupts in protest, these regimes have to fear for their own stability. So they're looking out for their own ends, although I don't suppose that any of these governments would be all that frustrated if Israel was to truly smash Hamas. Hamas is a pain in their sides. Hamas is a catamite cat's paw of Iran. It is not on their side. They don't necessarily like Hamas, and they've been siding with the strong horse in the region for quite some time. A demonstration of force would reinforce their perception of Israel as the region's strong horse. Nevertheless, they can't say that outright. They certainly have to behave as though they're superficially sympathetic to the Palestinian plight insofar as this is representative of it, and it's really not. But what the true problem is for the United States right now is containing Iran. Hezbollah looks to be, based on all open intelligence that we can see, very much prepared to enter this war and open up a northern front in Israel. And Hezbollah is absolutely a puppet of Tehran. It doesn't do a thing without Tehran's say-so. And Iran is making a lot of sudden movements that are making everybody very nervous. So getting the region on board, on the same page, is of absolute critical, paramount importance to American national security. It will cost American lives if they're not. And these children playing in the sandbox at these news outlets, trying to decolonize their newsrooms or whatever nonsense they've convinced themselves of, are doing immeasurable harm to the country of their birth.
Talking to Noah Rothman of National Review, nationalreview.com. He's the author of Unjust: Social Justice and the Unmaking of America and the Rise of the New Puritans Fighting Back Against the Progressives' War on Fun. Let me give you this right here. This is Joe Biden speaking in Israel as he was there with Benjamin Netanyahu, giving warning to other nations. One would think this was Iran amongst others.
We've moved U.S. military assets to the region, including positioning the USS Ford Carrier Strike Group in the Eastern Mediterranean, with the USS Eisenhower on the way to defer further aggression against Israel and to prevent this conflict from spreading. The world will know that Israel is stronger than ever. And my message to any state or any other hostile actor thinking about attacking Israel remains the same as it was a week ago. Don't.
So this is Biden, clearly saying he's on the side of Israel and playing very tough. And he was also clear to tell Bibi Netanyahu in that one-on-one meeting this.
Mr. President. Well, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. In the wake of Hamas's appalling terrorist assault, it was brutal, inhumane, almost beyond belief what they did. This cabinet came together and standing strong, standing united, and I want you to know you're not alone. You are not alone.
So that's President Biden. We're standing with you. Hey, other nations, don't mess with Israel. You're not alone. But this is Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman from Michigan. Israel just bombed the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians. To President Biden, this is what happens when you refuse to facilitate a ceasefire and help de-escalate. Your war and destruction only approach has opened my eyes and many Palestinian Americans and Muslim Americans like me. We will remember where you stood. Now, that's a member of the party, the Democratic Party, threatening the leader of the party. That much is for sure. But I think the question here is, Noah, what kind of ally is Joe Biden to Israel when the party has so many people who won't condemn Hamas, who won't even mention Hamas in a statement, whether that be Ilhan Omar, whether that be Congressman Andre Carson of Indianapolis and others? The party has a real anti-Semitism, anti-Israel issue. How, is Biden a trusted partner?
Well, I think Joe Biden has said a lot of the right things in ways that I don't think I've heard any American president say. When he came out in favor of Israel's right to self-defense, it was the most forceful statement of that kind I've heard from an American president in my lifetime. Joe Biden came out today and very directly and without equivocation say that Hamas bombed the hospital. He did so based on Israeli intelligence transmitted to the Pentagon and the Pentagon's assessment himself. And it took him a minute to do it as they were reviewing intelligence. He didn't get out in front of it. But he did exactly what news organizations are supposed to do. His administration, vis-a-vis Karine Jean-Pierre, has condemned in unequivocal terms the comments made by people like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when they were asked by name by a reporter what the administration's position was on their statements, basically saying we need a ceasefire right now, which is tantamount to saying Israel needs to stand down and not engage in its own self-defense. That is the sister soldier moment that so many people on the left and the right have been demanding Joe Biden make since 2019 when he ran against the progressive elements in his party. Does the party have an anti-Semitism problem among these members? Absolutely. Rashida Tlaib's a bigot. Ilhan Omar's a bigot. But they are also a rump caucus within the Democratic Party. Washington Post had a piece on the efforts by these members of the coalition and the Democratic coalition to lobby Joe Biden to come over to their side. How many of them are there? 13.
Hold on. Let's fight. Because I don't think you're wrong. And by the way, I did think it was a strong statement by Biden. I actually thought it was strong words from Karine Jean-Pierre. The question here is in believability. We could argue that the number of Democrats, progressives in the House that are of the very vocal Jew-hating set is a small number. But they have got thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of supporters on college campuses all across the country. We've witnessed it with our own eyes. They're going after Harvard and saying, we're pulling our funding. John Huntsman said, sorry, University of Pennsylvania, taking our funding because you don't engage moral clarity. In my beloved Indianapolis, the University of Indianapolis, a despicable statement. The president of Indiana University had to put out a second statement. The first statement was so blasé. So you argue that it's only 13, but they are representative of a really gross number of people who would be very fine with Israel's eradication. What does Biden do in the face of needing those votes in 2024?
Well, I think they would say the precise same thing about Republicans. They would say that Republicans have incubated within their ranks a level of racist resentment that maybe isn't reflective of their literal representatives in Congress, but they are sub rosa representative of these noxious sentiments. And unless they purge from their ranks all their voters and anathematize almost all their voters and render themselves a rump party, they're not serious about racial rapprochement. And I think that's just a callous political argument designed to advance a particular narrative that would advance the Democratic Party's political interests. I don't think it's true. At the same time, I don't think Democrats behaving as representatives of righteous and moral sentiments and casting aside actually in ways that I don't think Republicans have, their own members who have behaved in atrocious, morally repugnant ways is something that I should be dismissive of. I think it is significant. I think it's a powerful sentiment, a deserved sentiment. And it's one that if we want to encourage, we should welcome and say, good job. Let's hear some more of that. In fact, maybe you should go a little bit farther. If we were to say, well, that's not far enough because there are some college kids on campus who hate Israel and the academic environment in this country is corrupt to its core, all of which I agree with. I don't think that would beget better behavior. I think it would beget more the kind of thing we don't want to see, people retreating to their own corners and getting defensive and pent up. That's not what we want to see. We want to encourage this kind of engagement with the anti-Semites on the left.